Hey everyone, welcome to So You Want to Be in Ministry. I am so glad to have you here today. My name is Tim. I am incredibly passionate about the church and those that would lead within the church, those that are having a desire to lead within the church, and those that have a desire to follow godly leaders, which is why I started this podcast. And this podcast is all about educating you if you're thinking about jumping into ministry, equipping you if you're already in ministry, and then encouraging you if you're considering jumping out of ministry. And then I also want to empower you if you are somebody that really doesn't have a desire to jump into full-time vocational ministry, but you want to follow godly leaders well. I want to empower you to know what that looks like and to follow godly leaders that you are hearing and seeing through this podcast. I'm looking forward to the episodes that we have coming up, and I look forward to today's episode. So let's jump into it. Today, we get to interview Andrew Allsman. Andrew Allsman is on our staff at Metro Community Church. He is over communications, which involves all kinds of stuff. It involves like videography, social media, website. He also helps out to produce in our services on the weekend. So he covers a lot of the details that happen throughout the week, leading into the weekend, and then even kind of the behind the scenes. He does a whole lot of behind the scenes stuff, so it's interesting that he's stepping in front of the camera for this interview. But I'll let you let him talk you through what he does and some of the things that he helps bring to the table to make our services run really, really smoothly. So let's get into this interview with Andrew. Well, hey, Andrew, glad to have you here today. We have these kind of conversations all the time, except you're usually interviewing me. So if I'm doing videos for our church or something, you're the one kind of asking the questions behind the camera. So if you don't know that, now you do. But this time I get to ask you questions. So glad to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And yeah, definitely a different vantage point from that standpoint. I'm usually way more comfortable behind the camera, so this is a little outside my comfort zone, but excited to kind of just chat about what God's doing and all the different blessings that I get to be a part of here at Metro.
Yeah, it's awesome. You guys have grown so much even in the last couple of years. So I'm excited to talk about how we've grown in this area of our church and hopefully to encourage other churches, no matter the size, on how they can even implement some of these things within their own context. So give us an overview. Let's say it's Monday. You're about to start your week. You're looking forward to the next week, next series, whatever it may be. Walk us through like the high level view of the meetings you're having on your way to a weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. So when Monday hits, it's kind of immediately a review of what just happened. So um, we will oftentimes spend Monday just kind of meeting. I'll meet with all my team members on the communications team, as well as when I do like service producing, meeting with production and worship, and we'll kind of just as a team just kind of debrief from the weekend and talk about what went well, what's something that we want to improve moving forward, just little things like that if we're catching something that's maybe been a habit that we kind of want to break. So we're just really cognizant of those things on Monday and looking back because it's fresh on our minds. But we do start looking ahead too of what do we want this week to look like on social media. What was something that God did on the weekend that we want to share with people throughout the week, those types of things. So like I said, Monday's more of just a review, but it also is kind of now we're setting up where we want to go for the next 3 days that we're working together. And then even more so, just what do we want the weekend to look like? And usually we're a little further out than just being a week ahead on weekends, but it still is kind of putting the finishing touches on what the weekend is going to look like as we kind of get closer to it.
So how far out do you try to stay?
Yeah, we're generally, as far as possible to answer your question, but what I would say happens more often than not is we're at least anywhere from 4 to 8 weeks. It just kind of depends on the weekend, but I would say anything past 4 is good for us. Like we can usually make that happen at a high level. But when it starts getting, when we get beyond 4 weeks, we're kind of like, we're getting a little close, kind of close with some things. So there's a lot of moving parts, so it's hard to answer that completely. But yeah, anywhere from 4 to 8 weeks, I would say we're pretty far ahead.
Okay. So when you're evaluating a weekend, how do you, sometimes that can be subjective where it's just like, I liked blah, blah, blah. But then another person is like, yeah, but I liked. And how do you how do you make it more objective where you're like, this is something that was, we've got to share this, or this is something that is a problem, or how do you determine that?
Yeah, so one thing that's been sort of a shift over the last year, our pastor, Pastor Seth, has been really good about kind of honing in what we want to be as a church and what we're trying to accomplish. So it's not just to look cool, it's not just to be relevant. That's a piece of it. Like we want to be relevant, but one of the things that we really use to evaluate is what was our service transcendent? Did people experience God? And so that's probably the biggest thing. Another one that we word that we use all the time is authentic. Were we authentic? Did we do this in a way where like we were worshiping that we weren't just telling other people to worship, but we were actually worshiping? What was were we praying as a transition, or were we praying to be authentic? Like those types of things, we're evaluating all of that on Mondays. And from a communications perspective, we're looking ahead to the week and trying to share some of those authentic moments, those transcendent moments, so that people that weren't in the room or maybe have never experienced God or Metro might see some of that appear on their timelines and can, kind of join in and be a part of it, or it encourages them to like want to take a next step and actually experience that. So yeah, just all of the above. We're evaluating um so many things on Mondays, but those are the big ones. Transcendence and authenticity are the big ones that when we're looking at things, we want to be that every time.
Yeah, it is amazing. And so a church of any size can make this simple switch. It is amazing when you, because you have to transition things in a service. And too often, prayer is a very easy, natural transitional moment. And sure, there are times where that may be a transitional moment in our church to some level, but we don't approach it as a transitional moment.
Yeah.
We approach
Yeah.
it as a prayer moment, and then transition will happen.
Yeah,
uh,
yeah,
yeah,
absolutely, and we want prayer to be in all of our services,
yeah,
obviously. So you're naturally just gonna build that in, but it's kind of like worship. Like we build in time where we don't know what God's gonna be doing, but we want to be open to that. So it's kind of the same thing with prayer. Of like yes, we want to pray here, because we feel that there's space for God to be, God's gonna be moving. There's gonna be space for a prayer here, but we don't like practice what that prayer is. It's very authentic in that moment, and that's what we want to be every time. So it's a fine, like you were saying, it's a balance, but we try to do that, as authentically as possible.
what let me give it, just I feel like the need to have to give somebody out there very practical. So for example, if we're going from worship to preaching and we're going to pray, we will have the band stay in place, pray with the church. We will end the prayer, and then we're okay with the out quote unquote distraction of
Yeah,
the band moving as the pastor would start into his message. We would rather that than we're praying and you're all moving. Yeah. So very
yeah,
practical.
that's a great example, and
Yeah.
that's something we actually shifted with some of that mindset for us, because we used to be that we want to make sure band's off stage when everyone opens their eyes after the prayer and all that, and it's like, man, we're missing an opportunity for our band, our worship leaders, to be engaged in something so, as powerful as prayer. And so like that's been something that over the last couple of years we've sort of shifted, is like, yeah, we're okay with people open their eyes as they see movement. They know the band didn't just disappear. So we're okay with that, because we believe that we as a church need to be engaged in prayer moments.
Yep. Cool. All right. So that's how you're evaluating the previous weekend. So take us through, like, after you have those evaluation meetings and things, what happens moving forward?
Yeah, so then after those, we move pretty quickly into execution mode. So coming out of Monday, we kind of reviewed the weekend. We know what we want to do better and or what went really well, and then we start sort of just executing. Like I said, we're pretty far out usually, so there's not a whole lot of moving parts the week of, which is by design because that can get really stressful. But there are some things that we always need to kind of like shore up for the weekend. So from a comms perspective, that'll be just meeting with my team. So I have two people on my team in the communications department, the video and graphics, or video person and a graphics and socials person. So just meeting with them and kind of looking to the weekend and what do we want to share from the past weekend. So let's actually execute on those things. So let's get those videos out. Let's get those social posts scheduled, all that kind of stuff, as well as let's look forward to the weekend. What do we want for what do we think, is going to be the moment in service that we want to capture and share with people the next week? So it's even just sort of part of the execution is just simply looking ahead to the next weekend and being like, these are the moments that we want to capture.
Do you
Um,
do you look
yeah,
when you're looking forward? Are you looking through the service order? So, like in planning center, are you looking through if you have the sermon outline or message outline, like those types of things?
yeah, all of the above. So
Okay.
we're definitely looking at the order, and if we see a song in there that's maybe our people have engaged with in the past, we know this is going to be a really cool moment. We'll definitely want to capture that and share that. But yeah, also when Pastor Seth sends his outline, just looking at that, and these points seem pretty relevant for people. And we want to make sure that either that whether that's a graphic with that point on it, or just making sure that we pull from Pastor Seth's message, pull that clip from there so we can share that the next week on social. So a lot of it is, yeah, really just looking at those two elements going into the service. Um, yeah, and then from so that's a huge part of comms, and I would say even on a weekly basis, we really have to look at the elements that we're using in service. So we run like pre-service slides and videos that we just want to make sure are updated. So if there was an event on there that's past, we want to make sure we are looking at that every week and updating it. We have an event sheet that we hand out when people come in that kind of show the three upcoming events that we want to showcase on there. So we're looking at those. And Pastor Seth will do message series. So we're really just looking at different branding for each series. We want to make sure those are updated as well. So those are sort of the weekly rhythms with communications that we're looking at every single week. Um, from a service perspective, really just a lot of those things are already done going into the week. But if there was something on Monday when we looked ahead to the upcoming weekend that we need to execute on, so whether that's a lighting change or we change service because we feel like God's calling us to do something different in this moment, or Pastor Seth wants to make a call an audible or something like that, we want to make sure we're executing that on Tuesday because we have a rehearsal on Wednesday. So we want to make sure everything is set going into Wednesday so we can see it ran in real time with real people on the stage and see that everything sort of comes to fruition the way we think it's going to. And if not, then we can make the adjustments. So yeah, that's sort of the next step is just getting prepared for Wednesday where we can see it actually ran.
Do you evaluate Wednesday night, like coming out of it?
Yep, absolutely. So myself and our production person, our worship leader that's in Edwardsville for that weekend, will huddle up after and sort of just we've taken notes throughout. A lot of time the worship leader won't have a ton of notes because they're obviously on stage, but I'm sort of sitting in the back and just watching and taking notes on, this moment land, was this transition smooth from one song to the next? How did the band do? Like we're just listening for some of that out there, and we'll just really come together and sort of just have a discussion. And no one really is like, I don't want it to be like what I say has to go or anything like that. It's very open handed. I felt like this moment really didn't land. What were your guys' thoughts on this? And we disagree sometimes, and a lot of times we'll go with where the room is, or evaluate is it really worth making that kind of last minute change for something like this. So we just really evaluate from that perspective of what's worth changing. Do we think it makes a big impact in service and just coming together as a team, which has been really cool and something different that we sort of done is it feels like a team effort rather than one person just being like, we need to change this because I have a certain preference or whatever. So
Yeah.
it's been good.
Yeah, and seeing those different walls and different viewpoints, and I know that's happened with me even going into a weekend where I'm just like, you know what, I didn't even think about that. I do think that would be better. Like we need to
Mm,
do that. Yeah, there's been even on Sunday morning. So on my campus, we have to set everything up on Sunday morning. So there are
right.
moments on Sunday morning where they're like, "Do you think this would be better?" And I'm like, "Actually, I do. Are you
Yeah.
guys good? Like, can we make that switch? Like, I know it's a lot." And they'd be like, "I wouldn't have brought it up if I didn't want to switch it." I'm like, "Okay, let's
Yeah.
go for it." So
Yeah, and so what you're seeing on Sundays is a lot of what we're seeing on Wednesdays, which is going to
yeah,
be really cool, obviously, in the future for you guys to
yeah,
have that opportunity earlier in the week. But like, yeah, a lot of what you're seeing on that Sunday, we're trying to catch on Wednesday, so we don't have to do it on the weekend, because it can be a lot of stress for a lot of people to have to do it last minute.
I do want to be encouraging though to pastors. You may be the guy on staff, and you have volunteers. That is me. I have a bunch of volunteers that are doing this, and we still can make. I would say at times significant changes even on a Sunday morning. So if you give space for it, like to run through it and kind of go, I think this could be better. It can still happen even the day of, even though I would not prefer that, but that
Yeah.
is what I live in. So Yeah.
Yeah, and one thing I want to add to that, and you probably can speak more into this than I can, but just really like what I found in the past when communicating with volunteers is just tell them the why.
Yeah.
Don't just change it and be like, I want to change this, but tell them like why you think that's going to be impactful. And more often than not, they're ready to jump on board and are going to be the biggest advocate for that because they have the same vision that you do and mission that you do to reach people. So I found that in the past, just communicating that why, like why you think it's going to be a significant change, will be would be helpful.
I agree with that. It's not change for the sake of change. Like there is
Yeah.
meaning behind it. Yeah, I agree. All right. So that happens Wednesday night. Anything between Wednesday and so our first service is on Saturday night at your location. So anything
Yep.
between Wednesday and Saturday?
A lot of rest. So we've yeah, we've sort of shifted to where our creative team has those next 2 days to just rest and pour into themselves going into the weekend. It used to be Thursday would be a little bit hectic where we're trying to make those changes, but now what we do is if there we're finding that we have such small tweaks usually from Wednesday to Saturday that we just come in earlier on Saturdays now and make those changes. So Thursday and Friday are really just a time where we want to pull away and rest heading into the weekend, and then coming in refreshed on Saturday to sort of make any of those adjustments we had and just look to the first service, which starts at 5 p.m. So we're usually here pretty early on Saturday mornings and just getting everything ready if there's any last minute things we have to.
What? You
Yeah,
rest
yeah.
and
Try to, try to. Yeah,
you come in refreshed for a
yeah,
weekend? What is that? Like, yeah,
yeah. Crazy.
I know. That is so important. I think that is a critical part of the process though. Like it's one thing to plan it all, but if you are exhausted, it is very hard to execute it.
Yeah,
And there is something about resting in the plan and then making sure you're resting physically and spiritually heading into a weekend where you're ready to execute it. That's a big deal. Yeah, I agree with you, man. All right.
yeah, and
Oh, go
oh,
ahead.
I was gonna no, I
Yeah.
was gonna say even in the that rest, like you come in with a different perspective of it. One thing that we were finding is we were coming in so drained that it was like, man, we just want to get through the weekend, and now we get to really like be a part of the weekend if
Yeah.
that makes sense, and like be excited about it. So that's been a huge change for me personally. Like I come in Saturday just ready to go and excited about it.
I would say just because you touched on it, this isn't really this episode, but like we may have to do a different episode on this, but uh, you're acknowledging something there that I want to lean into. I used to do that too, where it's like we just got to get to the end of this execution. Like I can just make it through, and then like I'll take a nap on Sunday or
Yeah.
something. And so I think we used to view Sunday as the last day of our week, even though most of
Mm.
us had a day off before that. And
Yeah.
I think we're viewing Saturday night or Sunday as the beginning of our week now, which is even though it's the end of the execution,
Yeah.
it's kind of flipped where and now we're coming out of it excited on what happened and what we get to look forward to the next time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it has shifted, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about it from that perspective, but it does feel like that. It feels like rather than putting the finishing touches on it and we're stressed going into the weekend, it's like now we get to sit back, observe, and kind of just be a part of the worship. And then we can tweak things next week because we're not having to do so much of that in the moment anymore, if that kind of makes sense. So yeah, I hadn't thought about that, but it definitely does feel like that now that you say it.
Yeah. Oh, we're not stressing. We're letting it go and then we're just doing it.
Yep.
Cool.
Yep.
Okay, so then Saturday, what is going on? Like what do you do when
Yeah.
you come in?
Yep. So Saturday come in, like I said, pretty early, and it's just the finishing touches. So anything we've hit on Wednesday that Wednesday evening in that huddle that we need to change, I'm working with production and worship to just make sure that we are actually doing those, executing those well. And then it's sort of just I oftentimes will prepare. We do a huddle before we do a run through, a full run through with the band and production and everyone there. Before that, we do a huddle where we just walk the team through the service. So every little element we want to make sure we hit that so everyone knows what their role is and they're not coming in unprepared because I do feel like when you come in unprepared you're a lot more stressed. So we try to just overly communicate what the service is going to look like. So I'll after we kind of execute those things in the morning, I'll just take some time to really make sure that I've taken a step back and know what's coming in the service so that I can communicate it well. I'm sort of just there supporting if needed for the team, and then I'm just finishing up some last minute communications things as well. So really, that Saturday time is just open ended. Um, just whatever needs to be done for the weekend or trying to get ahead of things there.
Do this for me just to make it really practical. If somebody else is
Yep.
like, okay, you do a huddle and a like you talk through what does that look like. So I don't care if you pull up this weekend's service. Can you use your
Yeah.
phone? Yeah.
Yeah. Let me, I have it pulled up on my
So
computer real
you're
quick.
gonna you're he just I saw him do it this last weekend. I'm sure you're gonna do it this weekend.
Yep.
Um, just do go up until the message
Okay.
and just kind of so people can get a real idea of the details that we walk through.
Yeah, so I'll just read exactly what I read. So this was for our past weekend. So we always start 15 minutes before service with our pre-service playlist. So we have a worship playlist that's coming through, the lobby and the auditorium. And we also start with a 15-minute pre-service video. So that'll be triggered at 4:45 on Saturdays. We follow that up with a 1-minute countdown into service. At that point, the band will come on the stage and be ready to go because we are starting off service with the song Praise, which Travis is leading. From there, we will go into a host welcome, which we had John doing that this weekend. At that point, vocals, you'll step back behind the carpet and the band will keep playing underneath that hosting so that we just give it a little bit more of an atmosphere. With about 1:15 left in that hosting time, we're going to transition into Thank You, Jesus, for the Blood underneath as John does a song setup. And then he is going to give it back to the worship band, and the vocals will step up at that point as we go into Thank You, Jesus, for the Blood, led by Caitlin. Then we will go into Oh, Praise the Name with Travis leading, followed by All Hail King Jesus. Travis is also leading that, but we're starting a little bit differently with a big chorus intro. And then we will do a chorus reprise of Thank You, Jesus, for the Blood, which will be led by Caitlin. And as that song's finishing up, John will step back up and do a prayer over the rest of the service and over what God's been doing in that time. At that point, the table will come out for Pastor Seth, and Pastor Seth will walk onto stage. A reminder, worship team stays in position until John says amen, so they're engaged in the prayer in that moment, and then we'll go into Seth's message.
Yep. So there you go. If you've wondered how that happens, that's heavily how it goes. Very
Yeah,
detailed. It on my campus, we'll even do things so like we have a limited amount of mics that we can use. So one question that I have to know is which mic from which vocalist am I grabbing, and then what number is it, so the sound person knows like I'm on that mic, and so we'll deal with
yeah,
details like that. But any church can do that.
yep.
It doesn't, your size doesn't matter, your amount of staff, you can do that, and then it's amazing how things flow a little more smoothly.
Yeah. Yeah, and your team feels like such a part of it too. Like it doesn't feel like they're just coming in and you're just telling them what to do per se. It's more like they get to be in that discussion, ask questions if they have any.
Yep.
And one of my favorite things we do in that time is really preparing our hearts for worship. So I know you talked to Travis already, but that's more of his part in the huddle of like he'll prepare a devotion and then we'll have a prayer time before service. Like, what better way to just get ready for service than a prayer time of getting our hearts right and connecting with God? It was we're getting ready to lead people in worship. So that's probably my favorite time of the weekend is just that moment of just pulling back and in the midst of what can sometimes be chaos, just praying.
Yeah.
So simple, but I love it. I love that we do that and make that a priority.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, anything from there?
Really from there, I am watching services on Saturday. So we do the full run through, which I said, and that's literally everything top to bottom. So our hosts are there to run it. They run it exactly as they will with time, all that stuff. Pastor Seth will be there to go through his slides. Um, and if we have, any music after the message, any worship after the message, we'll practice that transition coming out of the message back to that. Um, yeah, so that's full run through. We usually finish that up with about 30 minutes left before service. So that gives the band kind of time to just relax before we get going. And then from there, it's just watching the service. So I'll just usually sit in the back or in the production booth and just watch service. And was everything executed the way we wanted it to? Was there something we want to make a shift for going into Sundays? And then we'll huddle up again after Saturday service as a team and just hit on those things. And if they're small things, we'll make the adjustment. If not, we'll hold those till next week to just kind of review and be like, this is something we could change moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And we do make adjustments from Saturday to Sunday at times
Yep.
for sure. So
Yep.
Okay. What about hosting? So you talked about a host. How do you set them up for win? How do they know what to communicate? What is the purpose of the host?
Yep. Yeah, so one thing we're very intentional about with our hosts is we do not want them to we don't want to feel like they're just making announcements. Their purpose is so much larger than that. So they really do help to take us on a journey wherever they're at. So they might be starting service or they might be in the middle of worship, and wherever they are, they we have to be really intentional about we want to match the moment in that. We don't want them to come up and really disrupt service by just giving announcements. So on from the comms side of things, we're really intentional about what makes it onto stage in an announcement per se. And we're pretty strict on that. We don't want every little thing to be on stage. So a lot of our communication plans, we have a framework for that already built out. So it's very easy to go to that and be like, this type of event will get stage promotion or not. But I'm weeding through that every week and preparing like this week, we want to add this event in, or this week we want to hold on that because we already got three or four other things that, we don't want to inundate people with information. So for the first step is just evaluating that, what needs to be on stage. The second step is really just we have what we call host notes, and that's just we'll break it down from the welcome and the wrap up, and we're just putting in each of those things and sort of just walking the host through what they need to say, the time they're going to have to say it, and sending that out. And then I will put some notes at the bottom that give more details on that event because we don't want to assume that the hosts know all about those events. So that'll be like if it's something that requires tickets, we'll tell them when those go on sale, we'll tell them the dates, and we'll really tell them the heartbeat behind what we want them to communicate. So it's not, don't just give details. Tell people why you're excited about it. Tell people, um, if your experience in a metro group, like that type, make it relatable, make it transcendent if you can in those moments. So yes, first step is getting the host notes prepared, and then I'll send that to the host and I'll meet with them and do what I just did there, where I'll be like, this is what we want you to communicate, and this is how we want it to come across. This is what we want people to feel whenever you communicate those things from stage. And then on Wednesdays, before the rehearsal, so this is during the day, we'll have our hosts meet up and we will actually run it with just the hosts. So that way they can get their timing down, they can run it, and we can see, what could we communicate better? Did this come across the way we want it to? And we can really just give them feedback so they have a couple days to prepare before they have to run it again, which we have found to be really helpful for them. So they're not coming in blind. They really know what we want to communicate and what our expectations are of them. So that was a lot there. We can elaborate on any individual item within that, but that's sort of the 10,000-foot view of it.
Yeah, so I get the host notes every week, and um, generally our host in a welcome or at the beginning of a service, whatever it may look like, we get about 90 seconds, maybe 120 seconds, so 1.5 to 2 minutes. I would say the information we're given from those host notes, and you provide those host notes. The information we're given, we could probably, if we just read it all, it could be 5 to 10 minutes easy. And so you are equipping the hosts with every bit of information they could possibly need. It's our job to go, okay, I understand what we're trying to do here. Now, in 90 seconds, I have to make it feel really personable so the audience doesn't go, well, that was the first announcement, and then this was the second announcement, and then this was the third announcement, and then we're singing
Yeah.
again. I have to
Yep.
make it feel like, man, I am ready to sing again, and I can't wait to, like, everything he just said, I can't wait for it. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'd be more than happy to if there's a way we could share our template for host notes, or
Yeah.
even just we have some guidelines to make sure. Like one thing you said there, announcement. Like we do not ever say announcements in hosting and that's intentional. We don't want people to feel like that. It's a part of our service.
What
It's something that that we
what
want to.
what do we
Yeah, go
call
ahead.
them? What, because we don't call them announcements. I forget what we call them.
Yeah, we generally just don't address them like
Okay.
in any form. We don't come up and say, "Hey, I have some announcements for you." We just
Yeah.
go with it and make sure that people feel like they're getting something out of it. It's
Yeah.
not all just us
Yeah.
getting something from them. So, and one thing I was going to speak into because you were talking about the information. So one thing we started doing recently that's I found really helpful was I put three different sort of topics within the notes that we want to address. So, what do we want them to know? What do we want them to feel, and what do we want them to do? Um, And to me, the feeling part is sometimes the most important. We don't want them to sit there and we're just giving them dates and information and then tell them to sign up. We want them to feel a part of our church. We want them to feel engaged with that. So I have that in every single item that we do for hosting to help the host kind of see where we're wanting to go with each individual thing.
Yep, mind, emotion, and will. We capture
Yep.
this is the things you need to know. Here's the emotion that you're probably experiencing, and then there's will. Like we want you to act on this information that you
Yes.
now know and feel. We don't want you to
Yep.
sit there. We want you to do something with it. So
Yep.
yeah, and I would say it's heavily working because some of the events that we have promoted are like people actually do put feet to it. It
Yep.
keeps happening.
Absolutely.
Like I know we got an
Yep.
event coming up here in March that is filling up very quickly. So yeah,
Yeah.
cool. All right, and you may be thinking like, holy cow, like you do all this for a 90-second part of your service?
Yeah.
Yes. Now, once again, if you don't have a staff department for this, very simply as a whether it's the pastor or you have a volunteer doing it, they can you can do those three things. What do people need to know? What do you want them to feel? And then what do you want them to do? And then it just you have that rhythm every week where it's just like, hey, don't forget to talk about that event. It's like, but and you've already processed with them the knowledge, the feeling, and the doing, and so it's just routine. It becomes routine. So you may have to do some stuff on the front end. It becomes more simplified on the back end. I'm guessing just because I've seen the host notes. I'm guessing you're copying, pasting into the.
Yes. 100%.
It's time
Yep.
time saving as well. So
Yep.
yeah, cool.
Yeah, once you get the template, it's pretty easy just to
Yeah.
change up. We do a lot of the same things every week, like with our new here, with our first time guests, that kind of stuff. We hit a lot of the same things every week, so it's really just whenever we have those bigger events, I just change those up. And once you get that template set, it's super easy to do. It takes about probably 10 minutes to get everything going on that.
Yeah, we'll have to put out a we can put one of those on social media, like the basic template or something.
Yep. Yep.
Let's talk through. Hang on. Jeez, why am I having so many problems with this? I'm gonna have to show bloopers on this one. Okay, here
I
we
didn't
go.
know if this was just common and you just roll with the punches like this all the time because
No,
yeah.
this is rare. This is dumb. Like this is it has not happened. Nothing like this happened with Travis. So I
Of course, yeah.
I of course I would have the guy over all of our computer stuff and everything goes dumb. So
Yeah. Yeah.
anyway, so what is there anything special that we do with events? Like what so when we do the doing part, putting feet to it, what what are we doing on that throughout the week or leading up to it or anything like that?
Yeah, so a lot of our events, so let's just say let's just use Christmas as an example since we just got through that. For Christmas, we're usually about 12 weeks out on Christmas, which again isn't super hard to do. It might sound like a lot, but it's not hard to be, that far out on stuff and just more prepared in that sense. And we were really this Christmas, we really focused on being simple with things, but so we'll have like a team meeting. We call it our creative team about 12 weeks out and sort of just brainstorm. What do we want Christmas to look like? How do we want to align it with what Pastor Seth is going to be, talking about? And then from there, it's really just like once we finalize that, it's just execution. So the weeks leading up to that will just be I handle a lot of like the items that we get, but we have, we decorate our lobby. Um, we will get some food items. Like this year we did cookies and hot chocolate. Um, Sometimes we'll do giveaways, but those are few and far between. But just all of those types of things come out of that creative team meeting, and we have about 10 weeks to execute those. And so really it's just project managing and making sure that like we write it all down and put deadlines on it and then just make sure we're far enough ahead on those things. So for events, that's really the only thing that changes in that regard is just like we're further out. And because of that, we're not stressed leading up to it. Like we have a game plan from about 12 to 10 weeks out. And we're just executing those next 10 weeks. What do we need for all of those? And it's sort of the same thing with communication side of things for that. We're about the same. length out, and we meet as a team, put a game plan together, and then we just make sure we stay on pace with what we want to do with each of those bigger events.
You've shared with me that social media is a question you get asked a lot. Could you walk us through like how we approach social media aspects of our church?
Yeah, constantly changing. I know that's not what everyone wants to hear, but it really is. The way that algorithms are playing or how people are engaging with social media is so different. But one thing I feel like has been happening that is extremely beneficial for the church is video. Videos are the big thing right now on social media, and anyone can do videos. Um, a lot of times we look like and I'm saying Big C Church will look to bigger churches like Elevation and be like, we have to be like that, but you don't at all. With the way the algorithms have changed, people want to see an unpolished video in their feed. So what does that mean for you? You can literally capture your message on a phone and share pieces of that throughout the week. That's really a lot of what we do is we use content we get on weekends and then share it throughout the week. It's like we don't even have to make content a lot of times because our pastor has already put the preparation in to prepare a message. Our worship team's already, leading worship, so we're just capturing pieces of that a lot of times on our phones and sharing that out throughout the week, and that's some of our highest engaging content because people are getting a glimpse of what our church is about, as well as we're able to share the gospel with them 24/7. Like we can reach them anywhere by posting those throughout the week, and we don't really have to do a whole lot with that. So it is ever changing. It does seem like a lot to do, but it's not. Like any church can do it, and any church can gain traction on that and share the gospel throughout the week with something as simple as just the video of your message. Like it
Yeah.
can be that simple.
And if you're pursuing after God moments, and you already talked about how you're already looking forward going, when could this possible God moment be? And so if you're already anticipating God showing up, which I mean, to be frank, a church should expect that God's going to show up every
Yeah.
week. Like if you don't expect that he's going to show up, why are you expecting anyone else to show up? Like you didn't
Yeah.
start with the one that you I mean, like you should be centering it all on. So
Yeah.
if you have an expectation that God's going to be present, he's going to do something, and we anticipate like it may be in these moments,
Yep.
and then you're capturing those moments, people all over the world want to have moments with God. And if they're
Yep.
seeing a church that's having moments with God, you don't think they want to be a part of that moment with you? Like, even if it's
Yeah.
after the fact, yeah, they do. They want to be a part of that moment.
Yeah, yeah, and a couple other just tips that I picked up along the way. Just be be authentic. Like I said, that's a big part of our services, but be authentic. So if you're a pastor, grab your phone and share your struggle. Share like how God's been working through your life this week. Don't act like you have it all together or that you have to be perfect on social. Like the things that have resonated with people the most are the sharing the hurts, sharing the things that you're going through, because chances are someone else is going through that. So just be real. Don't feel like it has to be polished. um, and like I said, most people have a smartphone, so if you have a camera on that, just record yourself sharing that and post it. Um, if you have someone in your church that can take photos, have someone on weekends just take some photos and then share those, and so people get to see what is God doing in your church. What does your church look like? Because if they can't see that, it's going to be hard to convince them to walk through your doors because people just don't do that nowadays as much as they used to. So you really want them to see what am I walking into? What is this pastor about? What is the church about? So the more that you can share that, the more I think that people will step foot inside of your physical buildings.
Yeah. If they feel comfortable with you before they set foot in, they're going to have a level of comfortability when they step in. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Is there any social media platforms that you were like, I would really recommend if you're only going to choose one, if you only have time for one,
Mm.
try this one. Like, or
That's tough. Yeah. Yeah.
which one is the simplest to jump into if you're going to jump in the water first?
Yeah, I think Instagram is the easiest because Facebook you can do so many different types of posts, but Instagram you got videos and you got photos. Um, and those we get a ton of traction on both of those things. So I would say Instagram, and that's honestly where a lot of people are too. I know there's a lot of people on Facebook, but Instagram seems to be the more hip app right now.
Yep.
And I think you get a lot of demographics on there. and it's like I said, it's a little bit easier than navigating all the algorithms on Facebook and um, yeah, and all that. So I would say Instagram if you had to choose, but I like having both Instagram and Facebook. Those are the ones we use the most. And yeah, and I also want to encourage you. This is one people don't often think about, but YouTube. So many people are on YouTube. I know Tim can attest to this. So if you're sharing, you can share the same content across all three platforms. Like you can do a short on YouTube, you can do a reel on Instagram and Facebook. So if you're cutting up part of your message and you're doing a video, share it on all three platforms. Like post it on YouTube, build up your YouTube presence because there are so many people on YouTube right now, and I think it's the fastest growing social media network. So
Yeah, it may feel old school, but it's also new school.
yep,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah, they've done a good job of kind of embracing the new. Anything
Yep.
else for us, man? You've been so helpful. You've kind of pulled back the veil. I know a lot of people are going to be excited to hear these things, learn from these things. But anything else for us?
I don't think so. I did just kind of want to encourage everyone. Like it seems like we do a lot, and I know there's a lot of information in this, but I really do think it's applicable to anywhere. So just be encouraged by that. Like God's got a plan for your church, and the more that you can be prepared and lead people in that, and help your volunteers feel prepared and knowing what they're getting into for the weekend, I really do feel like that eliminates so much stress and just distractions and things like that. So. Um, I hope that what you've heard is that the things that we do, like you can do them, like they are applicable anywhere, no matter your size. It might look a little different, but the concepts and principles are kind of the same. So I hope everyone's leaving with that because that's what I was hoping to get across in this.
Yeah, absolutely. And so your homework, listener, if you are leading any of these areas, choose one. Just choose one thing. Like don't get overwhelmed by all the things. We gave you all the information. Choose one thing and go, okay, for the next 3 months, we're gonna focus on this. This year, we're gonna focus on this. Like get good at one thing and then add another thing later. And before you know it, you'll be doing all of it, and it's gonna feel very simple because it is simple. You just got to get in the rhythm of doing it. Um,
Yep, absolutely.
cool, man. Well, I appreciate you being here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been a blast. It's nice to be on the other side of the camera. So
All right.
per se.
See you, dude.
See ya.
I really appreciate Andrew's heartbeat. He has such a desire for things to be done well, to be accurate, for it to be very consistent week in and week out. He gave you tons of helps there. Once again, in this whole series of planning a weekend, the whole idea behind it is find the one thing you can do this weekend and start doing it. You may not be able to do everything. You may not be able to do it to the level that we do it, but find the one thing you can do and apply it into your weekend services. And I hope you're hearing, we use a lot of volunteers. Like people want to be a part of these things. In your church too, there's people that want to be a part of these things and are willing to figure out how to do them. And so utilize them, equip them, set them up for success to the best of your ability, and then empower them to go be creative in it, to share the church's mission and to share the mission of Jesus Christ. Because if we're all pursuing after people and trying to make disciples who make disciples, we're trying to evangelize, we're trying to win the lost, we're trying to do all those things and pursue moments with God, we're going to see other people connect and want to embrace that mission as well. Make sure you're doing that. Thank you so much for tuning in. Hope you subscribe, like, do all the things, and I will see you next time.